For most, for most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is a joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good, but not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an incessant yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle would control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself, as we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering in the denizens of his mad realm, and chilling vapor that his loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous horseman. Terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it at all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself inwardly. He would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Some day he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. We have shown how we got from out from under. You say, yes, I'm willing, but am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum, like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? Yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you'll find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. How is it that how is that to come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? You're going to meet these new friends in your own community, near you. Alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds, high and low, rich and poor. These are future fellows of AA. Among them you'll make lifelong friends. You'll be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together, and you will commence shoulder to shoulder your common journey. Then you'll know what it means to give yourself, that others may survive and rediscover life. You'll learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected, and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you, should you wish them above all else, and be willing to make use of our experience. We are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. I hope is Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions. Many are many we are sure boom, boom, boom. Many, we are sure, will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet, havens for those who must find a way out. In the chapter, Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to help. Suppose now that through you several families have adopted this way of life. You'll want to know more of how to proceed from that point. Perhaps the best way of treating you to a glimpse of your future will be to describe the growth of the fellowship among us. Here's a brief account. Years ago, in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. From a business standpoint, his trip had come off badly. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set up on his feet financially, which at the time seemed vitally important. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke, still physically weak and sober, but a few months he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? One dismal afternoon he paced a hotel lobby, wondering how his bill was to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend. Of course he couldn't drink, but why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again it was the old insidious insanity. That first drink. With a shiver he turned away and walked down the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar. But what about his responsibilities, his family, and the men who would die because they would not know how to get well? Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. There must be many in this town. He'd phone a clergyman. His sanity returned, and he thanked God. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into a booth and lifted the receiver. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damaged. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape, painfully aware of being somehow abnormal. The man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower, Meister could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary. He told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business, only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he made his livelihood. He'd do anything, he said, but that. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home sometime later, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went on a roaring bender. For him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. He saw that he would have to face his problems squarely, that God might give him mastery. One morning he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his troubles had been. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he'd hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business. At midnight he came home exhausted, but very happy. He's not had a drink since. As we shall see, he means a great deal to his community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. But life wasn't easy for the two friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. One day they called up the head nurse of a large hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had any first-class alcoholic prospects. She replied, "Yes, we've got a corker. He's just beaten up a couple of nurses, goes off his head completely when he's drinking, but he's a grand chap when he's sober, though he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months. Understand he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got him strapped down tight." He was a prospect all right, but by the description none too promising. The use of spiritual principles in such case was not so well understood as it is now, but one of the friends said, "Put him in a private room, we'll be down." 2 days later, a future fellow of AA stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. "Who are you fellas, and why this private room? I was always in a ward before," said one of the visitors. "We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism." Hopelessness was written large on the man's face, and he replied, "Oh, that's no use. Nothing will fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it." For an hour the two friends told him about their experiences. Over and over he'd say, "That's me. That's me. I drink like that." The man in the bed was told of the acute poisoning from which he'd suffered, how it deteriorates the body of an alcoholic and warps his mind. There was much to talk about the mental state preceding the first drink. "Yes, that's me," said the sick man. "The very image. You fellows know your stuff all right, but I don't see what good it'll do me. You fellows are somebody I was once, but I'm a nobody now. From what you tell me, I know more than ever. I can't stop." At this, both of the visitors burst into a laugh. Said the future fellow anonymous, "Damn little to laugh about that I can see." The two friends spoke of their spiritual experience and told him about the course of action they carried out. He interrupted, "I used to be strong for the church." But that won't fix it. I prayed to God on hangover mornings and swore I'd never touch another drop, but by 9 I'd be boiled as now. Next day, found the prospect more receptive. He'd been thinking it over. Maybe you're right, he said. God ought to be able to do anything. Then he added, he sure didn't do much for me when I was trying to fight this booze racket alone. On the third day, the lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his Creator and said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary. His wife came, scarcely daring to be hopeful, though she thought she saw something different about her husband already. He had begun to have a spiritual experience. That afternoon he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital a free man. And that was in June 1935. He never drank again, and he's become a respected and useful member of his community. You can give it up. And that was a little bit from the big book. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.